Are you trying to decide whether or not you need to form an LLC for your real estate investments? Then stay tuned, because today we're going to talk about the 6 things that you need to know, whether you're just starting out with real estate or whether you're an experienced real estate investor, as to whether or not you need to set up an LLC to hold those investments. Ready to do that? Let's get to it. Hi, my name is Jim Hart. I'm the founding attorney here at Hawthorne Law, where we help small business owners and online entrepreneurs to get their legal house in order so that you can focus on what you do best, and that is building something that truly matters in the world. Today, we are actually taking a little bit of a sidestep. We're going to be talking about real estate investing and the considerations that you need to think about if you are considering putting your real estate holdings, or your real estate business for that matter, into an LLC. There's a lot of things to think about here. There's a lot of stuff to digest. So I've broken it down into 6 main topics that we're going to talk about today. I don't know how long this video is going to go. It could be a long one. I imagine it probably will be. Stick with me. Anyway, let's jump into it. The first issue you need to think about when you're going this route, when you're thinking about your real estate investor and you're thinking about forming an LLC, is you just need to know what an LLC is. I've done a lot of videos that talk about LLCs, what they are, how they work, and you can find those on my channel. But in general, basically what you need to know is an LLC, it's not a corporation, it's not a partnership, it's not a sole proprietorship, it is an LLC, and that stands for Limited Liability Company. There are several main benefits to forming a limited liability company to hold your real estate investments. So the first main benefit that you get with forming a limited liability company is the limited liability nature of it. That's why most people put their real estate holdings into an LLC, is because they're looking to do some sort of asset protection. Number 2, it's a pass-through entity for income tax purposes, which can be a huge benefit. You put the money in there, as long as the money flows through, you don't need to necessarily worry about a separate tax return unless you've made an S election. That's a whole nother issue. They're extremely flexible. LLCs are easy to set up, they're easy to run and operate. You've got to make sure you follow all the proper formalities, but in general, if you do that, they're fairly easy to handle. The second issue we're going to talk about is why you might need an LLC to hold your real estate investments in the first place. So the main reason you're going to form an LLC to hold your real estate investments is because you want that asset protection from the tenants who might sue you for whatever happens. I mean, this could be anything from, let's say you hold properties in a college town and some kid gets drunk and falls off a balcony and hurts themselves or something like that. That's one issue. I got a great story, and this is actually the reason I went to law school. Nobody probably knows this. Back before I went to law school, I used to live in a little suburb of Philadelphia called Westchester. And in Westchester, I lived in a little townhome. And back in 1999, there was a hurricane that went through, and this hurricane was called Hurricane Floyd. It went up all the way up through the East Coast. It hit Philadelphia, and I did a quick Google search on this, and here's what Google had to say about Hurricane Floyd and Philadelphia. On September 16th, 1999, Hurricane Floyd dropped more rainfall in a single day on Philadelphia than in the previous 125 years. And what that equated to me in my townhouse was my landlord was doing some work on the roof at the time, and they did not properly secure the roof. Well, you can imagine if you've got a bad roof and you got more rainfall that's been dumped on a city than has been dumped on that city in the last 125 years, you can imagine what happened. All the water ran down into my apartment, which was on the first floor, flooded the apartment. 6 inches of rain, ruined furniture, ruined electronics, ruined a whole bunch of stuff, and it landed me in court with my landlord. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what happened from there, but you can imagine that is just one example of things that can happen when you have a situation where you're a landlord and you've got tenants. All sorts of things that can happen that might make you liable to them for various things. So that's one of the main reasons why you want to have an LLC formed and put your real estate holdings into it. That's not to say that there aren't some downsides to using an LLC, and that's the third thing I want to talk to you about today, is the downsides. So one of the main potential downsides of running an LLC is that they're expensive to run, they're expensive to maintain, it's going to cost you several $1,000s. That is a big issue. That is something to consider. If you live in California, which a lot of my viewers do live in California, you know that the franchise fee to maintain your LLC each year is $800. That's an expensive proposition to form an LLC that you might be wondering whether or not you even need. Another issue that comes up with LLCs and rental real estate is that if you're going to be financing the property, you can't finance the property and purchase it right into the LLC from the get-go. I've talked to lenders about this, and a lot of them want to see a history of income that comes with that LLC if you're going to be purchasing the property in the name of the LLC and financing it through the LLC. And the problem there is, let's say you go out and you find a property that you want to purchase and you form an LLC to hold that property. Well, the LLC has only been around for about 5 minutes, and so you don't have that history of earnings to justify the lender giving you the money to purchase that property. So you may need to purchase the property in your personal name, at least when you're first starting out and getting going, until you're a bigger entity and you've got some credibility with the banks. So that is a problem. And then you think about, okay, well, maybe I'll purchase it in my personal name and then transfer it into the LLC. Well, that raises a whole other series of issues, most of which being the due on sale clause. Now, I have talked to lenders about this as well, and they've told me in general, if you're making your payments on time, you're not a problem. Maybe you've got a lot of business with the bank because you've got a number of mortgages from a number of different rental properties. If you transfer those properties into an LLC, they're probably not going to care too much, but you never know. It only takes one lender to say, you know what, we're going to trigger that due on sale clause, and then you're basically effed. Really. So you need to find a new lender, you need to transfer the property back into your personal name, there's all sorts of things that can happen, and then you defeat the whole purpose of forming the LLC. So there's that. I need some coffee. So the fourth issue we're going to talk about here today is really the insurance versus LLC debate. So you'll find some videos out there that talk about this, and they basically say if you don't really need an LLC, you just need insurance. And there's other videos out there that say you don't need insurance, you just need an LLC. And frankly, I don't know that either one of those are correct. I do know that the LLC alone is not going to be enough. And the reason why the LLC alone is not going to be enough is because there is always a risk that you might find a judge that's going to pierce your corporate veil if you don't run your LLC properly. And if they do that, the LLC is going to serve no purpose. And a lot of people say, or I've seen videos that talk about this that basically say that's going to happen in all situations. It's not going to happen in all situations if you do the LLC correctly from the beginning. You run it, you maintain it properly. You know, you've got your books, your tax ID number, your bank accounts, your operating agreement, which is very important. I've talked about that in a number of videos. If you do all that correctly, you shouldn't have an issue with the judge piercing the corporate veil. There could be things that happen where maybe your own negligence is a reason why the corporate veil is pierced, or you do something willful or intentional that causes a judge to pierce the corporate veil. So there's other things that could happen that could cause a judge to pierce the corporate veil. And so you just need to be careful. If you have just the LLC in place and no insurance, well, that's going to be a problem. And on the flip side, if you just have insurance and no LLC, that could also be a problem because let's say, I don't know about you, but I've dealt with a lot of insurance companies as a lawyer. What I've found is that insurance companies don't always like to pay out claims the way they're supposed to, the way their contract says they should. And so if you get sued and the insurance company steps in, they're like, you know what, we don't want to pay this, or we're going to deny this claim for whatever reason, whether it's because it's for a claim related to something that's not covered by your policy, or because, again, you did something intentional or negligent that the insurance company says we're not going to cover that claim, then you don't have insurance, you don't have the LLC, you've got a big problem. So both of these things work well if you have them both in tandem together. So the fifth issue we need to talk about is whether or not you need to have an LLC for every single property you own. Again, this is something where you'll find some people that say you absolutely have to have an LLC for every property you own, and somebody says, you know what, you don't need it for every property, you just put all your properties in one LLC. The issue here being that if you only have one LLC and you put all your properties into that LLC, then you're subjecting all your properties to potentially being foreclosed on by a creditor who might win a lawsuit against you, versus if you've got each of them in a separate LLC, your liability is limited to one LLC that you have with that one property. Now, in general, what I would suggest is when you're just getting started out, you might want to put 1, 2, maybe 3 properties into one LLC. And then as you start to grow, let's say you're buying a property each year, then going forward into the future, you're going to want to look at more advanced strategies. You know, when you've got more money built up, you've got more equity in your properties, and you've got more liability exposure, then you might want to look at advanced using trusts and LLCs and umbrella LLCs and all that stuff that's going to be a little bit more advanced, and where you're actually going to need to pay a lawyer to do all those strategies for you. And that's probably not something that you're going to need to do right off the bat when you're just starting out. All right, so there's a whole lot of other issues that you really need to think about when you're trying to decide whether or not you need one LLC or multiple LLCs for each property. Things like, do you have partners that are investing with you? Are you paying these properties off, or are you highly leveraged with these properties? Is this an entity that's really just you as a single investor just getting started out, or are you more advanced? Do you have 10, 20 properties that you need to consider protecting? All these things are going to go into your decision as to whether or not you want one LLC, or you're going to form an LLC for each property, or even for each bundle of properties. Maybe you have 2 or 3 properties in one neighborhood, you want to bundle them into one LLC, or maybe you've got several units in one apartment complex and you want to bundle those into one LLC. So there's different ways that you can do that, and there really is no right or wrong answer. You're really going to need to talk to a lawyer and figure out what they have to say about that, and get their advice and guidance on those issues. And just understand there's going to be a broad spectrum of answers when it comes to that one issue. All right, and the last issue is just really another reminder that if you're going to be setting up an LLC for your rental real estate, you want to make sure that you run it properly. You want to make sure that you put the LLC in the state where the real estate is located. Don't go falling for this Wyoming, Nevada, whatever strategy that's stupid. You don't want to do that. I really want to swear, but it's YouTube, so we're not going to swear, because I found that when you swear on YouTube doesn't like it too much. Anyway, so like I said before, you want to make sure you got your operating agreement, you got your tax ID number, you got your bank account, you've got a structure for how you're running the business, you've got your minutes when you make a decision, when you decide to purchase a property or sell a property, when you decide to bring in a tenant, whatnot, you're putting that in the minutes and the corporate books, and you're documenting all these things. You need to make sure you're running your business, your rental business, like a business, and then you'll eliminate or minimize the chance that you potentially could have a judge pierce the corporate veil for your LLC. All right, if you like what I'm talking about, make sure to leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, click the bell thingy, all that stuff. And if you liked this type of video, I think next week I'm going to do another video that's going to talk about some tax issues related to purchasing real estate and why it's so important that you can do that. So make sure you check that out right over here, and we will see you again. Oh, what's wrong with me today? Time out. Got some pass. I'm totally messing up all this. Oh my god.